I watched the car pull into the gas station and hesitate, like the driver was looking the place over and thinking, oh, hell. No. I can't blame them. To get here they had to drive through the entire town. And from the sound of the blasting music, I'm guessing they passed Luke Swenson too. They came here for the only reason anyone comes. They had no other choice. It's a girl. The goons were moving around the store looking for snacks and jacked up energy drinks. They all stopped in unison and popped their heads up like excited prairie dogs. To me, it looked like it was the closest they'd been to a real woman in months. All the local girls knew they were losers, and took great pains to avoid them. The girl got out of her car. She looked cold. She fiddled with the gas pump for a moment, then reluctantly walked toward the door after reading the card reader broken, see cashier sign. She was pretty with dark hair and big eyes. I gave her a friendly smile as she approached the checkout. Let me guess, you took the detour and got lost? She nodded. Don't feel bad. You're like the 7th or 8th lost person through here today. I'm guessing that someone, I flicked my eyes in the direction of the goon squad, took a detour sign home to decorate their garage. The girl's eyes slipped past me to the posters of the missing girls tacked up on the wall. 2 local girls gone. Vanished. Some people were saying there was a serial killer. Others just thought the girls ran away. Looking at our town and what it has to offer, I mean, why would anyone want to stay? I thought the girl would ask about the posters, but she didn't. Is there a bathroom? The girl asked instead, her voice tiny. I pointed toward the back of the store. She turned and made her way toward it, passing by the goons. She looked up at them, recoiled a bit, and scurried past. I heard the bathroom door shut and the bolt slam into place. They catcalled after her, not appearing to notice her revulsion. You guys going to buy anything? I asked the 3. If not, you gotta go. We're looking. They turned back to the shelves. I stayed at the front. It was never a good idea to leave the cash drawer unattended when those 3 were around. I heard the bathroom door open and click shut a few minutes later. The girl didn't immediately come up to the counter. I figured that she was looking around. Then the girl gasped, loudly, from the back of the store. Immediately the goons erupted into laughter. I jumped out of my chair, pausing long enough to lock the cash drawer. In the back I found the girl kneeling on the floor, where she had been looking through a bin of half-price sodas and soon-to-expire snack items. The goons were surrounding her like hungry hyenas. Leave, I told the goons. They looked at me sullenly. Then Red grinned, picked a candy bar up, and slid it into his pocket. He winked at the girl, then patted my head like a puppy as he walked past me to the door. His buddies each grabbed a candy bar and followed him. I sighed, I'm sorry for whatever they said to you. She told me she was fine. The girl followed me back to the register and paid for gas. I pulled a map out and opened it wide on the counter. Cell service can be really spotty around here, so sometimes GPS fails. I pointed out where we were, then pointed out the road that she should have turned on. It can be hard to see at night, so go slow and keep an eye out for it. I handed her the map. She looked out in the dark toward her car. The goons were loitering by it, their truck rumbling close by. I sighed again. I'll walk you out. She smiled, relieved. The goons revved the truck up when they saw me walking out with her. When she and I were halfway to her car they took off. I walked around her car and kicked the tires while she filled the gas tank. I bent and examined the back passenger side, standing up when I heard the hose click off. That tire looks a little low. It should be fine, but get someone to check it when you get back to civilization. She nodded and thanked me. I could tell she was in a hurry to get back on the road and the hell away from this place. I couldn't blame her. I waved and walked back into the gas station. She drove away. And that should have been that. But there was this niggling feeling at the base of my skull, telling me that I should have done something else. I looked out the window toward the road, waiting to see if the goons would follow her. They'd turned left toward the bars. She had turned right. I watched for several minutes but didn't see any headlights until Luke Swenson arrived. How'd it go? He asked me, tromping through the front door with the annoying energy of an 8-year-old. Maybe dancing naked under the moon really did energize a person, as he claimed. Your son and his friends took off with some candy. Otherwise, it was a pretty good night for sales. Red needs to stop hanging out with those two, Luke said. Or maybe those two need to stop hanging out with Red. Not too sure which way that goes. He unlocked the cash drawer. What do you think? I wasn't going to diss my boss's son to his face, although I had plenty of bad things to say. I clocked out and I grabbed my stuff and left. The niggling feeling continued in my skull, growing more insistent. I tried to ignore it and drove home. I dropped my keys and cell phone on the counter and got myself a cold soda out of the fridge. I thought about the girl and wondered if the tire on her car had stayed inflated. I wondered if she'd found the right turn in the dark. I thought about the goons. They probably hadn't followed her. But they had been surrounding her car, looking it over, waiting for her. It was absolutely none of my business. I picked up the other set of keys and walked out the door. The keys were to a rusty piece of junk my dad had owned. He'd left it behind, the same way he'd left us behind. He couldn't handle a wife dying of cancer and a distraught, needy son. I turned right and followed the route the girl had taken out of town. It wasn't long before my headlights barely penetrated the dark. The road was rough enough to shake rust flakes off the car's frame. I'd be lucky to not strand myself out here with a broken axle. My cell phone was sitting at home on the counter. The girl had over an hour lead. If everything had gone right for her, she should be back on the interstate well on her way to wherever she was going. But things hadn't gone right. She'd made it onto the right road but the tire hadn't stayed inflated. My headlights illuminated her kneeling next to it, the tire iron in her hand as she strained to break the rusted nuts loose. The concrete of life had made her too petite, too weak, too unlucky. The goons hadn't followed her. Which was a pity really. They would have behaved like drunken raccoons, but they would have changed her tire for her and gotten her safely back on her way. My headlights were the only other car on the road. She looked at them, blinded, terrified. I left them on, left the car running, stepped out. A threatening shadow. Instead of calling out or walking toward her, I walked back to my trunk. Why? The motive for killing my dad was obvious. My mother was dying. She had 0% chance at surviving. She had weeks left. Weeks. And the bastard chose to leave her. He couldn't just wait it out. He had to make her feel bad, tell her about all the women he was going to date. He told everyone. So no one was surprised he disappeared, never to be seen again. It had felt therapeutic killing him. Good. Really good. I'd killed Kelly as an experiment. I'd never really liked her. I wanted to see if I could get that feeling back. And I had. Oh, man, did I ever. What I hadn't expected to feel was this sudden, insistent need. It was like a drug, making me look sideways at every girl. Follow random women on sidewalks. Kill Nisha even though she was a really nice person. I sort of felt bad about that one. But that feeling. Oh my God, that feeling. That feeling made me steal the detour sign. Cut the valve stem open while the girl was pumping gas. I mean, you can only kill so many locals before you endanger yourself. Me, the killer. Her, the victim. That, the little niggling feeling in my skull whispers, is the way it needs to be.